Welcome to the Good Stuff podcast, brought to you from Creative Agency. Each episode we talk to good people doing good stuff. Hello, Sue and Kevin. Welcome to the Good Stuff podcast.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Could you start by just introducing yourselves and telling us a little bit about what you do?
I'm Sue Burnell, half of Business Net Zero, and we work with SMEs in the West Midlands and we help them work out what their journey is towards net zero.
Fantastic.
And I'm the other half of Business Net Zero. I'm Kevin Oubridge, Kev or Kevin, whatever you prefer. I just describe myself as a sustainability trainer and consultant, really.
So how long have you both kind of worked in the sustainability world?
Well, work-wise, probably since COVID, which is when we transitioned from our previous business, which was around exec coaching and leadership. Personally, it's something we've been interested in for about 30 years, but we've never found a way to combine it with the way that we work.
And what was the turning point there when you were able to go, actually this passion that you have for sustainability and planet and living ethically, to then being able to combine that with your skills in the workplace?
Well, we'd kind of been transitioning for a few years into sustainability type stuff, but it's very difficult when you're coaching leaders of big organisations to get them to do anything other than what the big organisation wants to do and is there for. But then COVID, our leadership coaching business just fell off a cliff. So it was kind of a good point to
pivot.
Pivot. That's exactly the word I'm looking for. Pivot. We could have resurrected our old business, but we decided no, we'd go wholesale for the sustainability thing.
And it's one of those things where you do something interesting and it leads to something else. So I saw a call on Facebook, I think it was, for Zero Carbon Shropshire that said, please help us write a report for how we get to zero carbon in Shropshire by 2030. And I thought, well, I don't know, but I'll come and I'll see what I can do to help. So I ended up project managing, helping to get that written. But at the same time, we met the most amazing people, the most amazing professionals throughout Shropshire, who know so much about this subject and were really generous when I'd pitch up to meetings and I'd be saying, what's this acronym, what's that acronym, what's a carbon footprint? And they would explain it. So we got connected to a superb network of professionals who were really generous with their knowledge. And we built up a network. Our business was in the southeast, we moved to Shropshire, but we built up this superb network in about 9 months that it would have taken years to develop.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing. It's the network that you work with. Working with SMEs in a local, or in Shropshire, in a kind of more local area, rather than working with big globals globally. You have a genuine network there and you can meet people at different events and you remember them and you can talk about stuff, and it's just a proper working network. As before, it was sort of on LinkedIn and it was all very impersonal and you didn't really know them and you never kind of bumped into them again. But it's fantastic working locally.
And do you find that the appetite in Shropshire and within the Shropshire SME community for kind of learning and growing and being more sustainable, is that there? Is there an energy and an appetite for that? Or do you think there's still some education needed?
There's a lot of education needed. So when we started writing the Zero Carbon Plan in 2020, there was very little appetite for understanding why a business needed to embrace sustainability, why it needed to go on a carbon reduction journey. Very little appetite, which perhaps isn't surprising because a lot was going on. This last year, the last 12 months, I think that appetite is really there now. So businesses, we can see climate change all around us, we're being impacted. Although the government isn't leading on it, big business is leading on it, and they are pushing down the pressure to SMEs to get them engaged to have carbon reduction plans. So I think that is the real driver, and the appetite is increasing.
Although I think a lot of businesses we've come across recently, they've been saying we've been doing lots of sustainability related activity, and you say, why is that? And they say, well, or is that because your suppliers or your customers or whatever have demanded it? And they've said, no, not really. We're just doing it because we want to do it, and we think it's important, but we don't really know why it's important, and we don't really know how to do it. And but we know, we've got to do something. And so it's there are those drivers in place, but I think it's just people's innate kind of sense of
it's the right thing to do.
It's the right thing to do, and we've got to understand this, and because climate change is very apparent to everybody, and everybody's got a future and future generations to kind of worry about. So,
and I think very much like your organisation, you're doing a lot of the right stuff, but there is no roadmap. So how do you know what to do?
Yeah. And so what the impact is going to be and how we can be better.
Absolutely. And where do you put your time and energy? Is it going to have any payoff, any benefit? So I think the day like we've done with you today, it is about backfilling that education. So you've got the confidence to know that you are doing the right things.
Yeah.
And you know where to go in future to do more of the right things that will be good for your customers, good for your whole supply chain. We talked about your community, your impact. So I think getting that education is absolutely essential.
Yeah, and you could just see, for me, just the impact on the team from the start all the way through to the end has been, and just change happening. We spoke to him about, it can be quite overwhelming, and the scale of what we're dealing with is so vast. And then when you see governments not prioritising the conversation, it can feel like, well, what impact can we genuinely make? So it was really, I think the structure of the day was really amazing, because that kind of the impact, it'd be like that statement at the beginning, which is, this is where we're at, and it's pretty scary.
Yeah.
But this is what you can do to make some real impact. And you could see the ownership that the Buy From team just took, suddenly going, well, okay, I'm really scared by that, but actually I feel like I can really start to make a difference. And that was really exciting to see, because businesses have to make change, and in any change you can only do that if your people want it, don't you?
Yeah. And do you know what really struck me this morning? Because you've got lots of young people in your team, and our responsibility as an older generation to really put our backs behind this, because these young people, honestly, I wanted to cry when they were saying how they felt about it. Now that we have a responsibility to them to be doing everything we can. But it's not easy. It's not easy to drive change in a business.
The work that we did this morning to kind of hammer home the message was the Fresk, wasn't it? So could you tell us a little bit about that, so people who don't know what it is? I mean, I'd never heard of it before, but it was a very powerful way to kind of make the point, really, and to start the day.
Yeah, it's called Climate Fresk, and it's developed in France. It's a card game with 42 cards, and you play a number of rounds with the cards. And the idea is that you map the climate crisis from from the causes to the effects and the impacts on humans. So as well as looking a little bit about biodiversity, looking at the whole complexity of the climate crisis. And it might feel a bit like it trivialises it to say this is a game, but this is a really heavy subject. We could spend hours telling people about climate science, not very engaging. I'm not a climate scientist. But to play an interactive game where, as a team, you solve the problem of creating a 42-card fresk or collage, which demonstrates just how complex the climate crisis is, that it has multiple causes, multiple effects, everything's connected. And I think at the end of that hour and a half, when you've played the first part of the game, that's pretty sobering stuff.
Yeah.
And I think from there, it's, well, if this is what it is, we have to look at, so how do we feel about that? And then you move from how we feel, the motivation, to action. And it's really important to get into action because, as you say, it's not a pretty picture.
No. And it's I think the thing that really kind of struck me was just that very important and powerful reminder of how interconnected everything is, and how easy it is to kind of disassociate yourself from things that aren't part of your daily life. So, you know, we don't live near glaciers, we don't live near an ocean, we don't live near a jungle, you know, we don't have experience of deforestation. So actually you suddenly start to go, well, obviously the weather we can notice, and we can see the floods, and what do we do about that? And actually you can't just tackle the flooding of the River Severn because it's connected to the glaciers. And I think just a reminder of that we are one planet, and we are connected to absolutely all of it, was the thing that I valued being reminded of. And I think that's part of the motivation, isn't it? That when you've kind of worked with teams on that, do you find that realisation, does it tend to be a different experience every time when you work with people?
It's always different. We haven't done very many Climate Fresk with a follow-up session with businesses. We used to do carbon literacy, which is very much more chalk and talk. The thing I like about Carbon Fresk is it's very interactive, and it's the group are discussing things and kind of coming up with ideas and making connections. That works. Carbon literacy is very chalk and talk, lots of information, and it takes a whole day. And then if you want to go on to planning with businesses and talking about how climate change affects the business and how your business affects climate change and what your business can do, you have to have follow-up sessions after the day. Whereas Climate Fresk, you do Climate Fresk in the morning, and then you can get people focusing on their business in the afternoon. And I thought today was brilliant because your team is fantastic, and they've all got very engaged and were very enthusiastic, and you came up with lots of good ideas. It doesn't always work as well, but it very rarely works better than it worked today, I think.
Yeah,
and
your team, you gave them all the autonomy, and I think that's what really matters. People can come up with ideas; they were really good ideas, relevant to the business. So the commitment was there, the energy was there, right down to planning. How do you next talk about this? How do you get it into your processes so that it becomes part of your daily habit? But I thought what was most impressive and really, again, very moving was talking about your business community and the wider impact you can have when you start to talk about this with your business community. And I know I'm not supposed to ask you a question, but I would say for you guys, what was that like?
Well, gosh, yeah, I think recognising the sphere of influence that we've actually got, and how we can mobilise as a business to really communicate, you know, what we've learned, why it's important, and what we're doing to make a difference. I think the power of community has always been something that that's been very much part of the ethos of Buy From, and I think really there's no greater moment than now to utilise that and to mobilise that, so and to do something where, you know, it's such, you know, where the whole team is together and you are kind of influencing the whole team, and everybody, to see everybody just go, look, just as you say, to be like at the beginning, I feel really overwhelmed and terrified, to then going, well, I'm going to take responsibility for that, and we can do this, and this is something that's going to make a difference, and what about that? Suddenly to be empowering the team and us all as a collective to recognise that this is really terrifying, and there might be lots of people not doing anything, but we can do this, and we definitely can make a difference.
Yeah.
And when you realise that, it's suddenly like, right, well, what are we waiting for? Let's get started straight away. And I think that was a really amazing thing to be part of and to see today.
And it was an amazing thing to witness. And I think that doesn't detract from, we need system change at all levels. So we're transitioning out of a fossil fuel economy, which it took us 150 plus years to transition into. There is no roadmap for small businesses. Big businesses have more money to work out how they do it. the Shropshire economy is highly dependent on small businesses. So when we can empower ourselves, as you're saying, we can work together as small businesses to support each other and create this ecosystem. But that doesn't mean it's easy. It's not easy, because we have to stop doing what we are doing, and we don't know what the future looks like. So it is a leap of faith. We're trusting ourselves that we can work this out.
Yeah.
And that's all we've got.
And I think it's very interesting, because Shropshire is full of tiny businesses.
Absolutely, micro businesses,
95% micro, which is less than 9 or 10, 9 or fewer employees, and then small businesses, and even medium businesses. But they're it's just full of them, and they're very, very small. So in one way, you kind of think, well, what carbon footprint can that tiny business have? And even if they reduce their carbon emissions to zero, it's going to make no difference. But actually, it does make a difference for them, and they feel engaged. But more importantly, they can promote the changes they're making in their business to their supply chain or their value chain. And if buy from, which is half a dozen employees, or you've got freelancers as well, but you could influence a far bigger business to suddenly take on climate change and sustainability planning. And if you do that to 10 much bigger businesses, I mean, that's a huge impact. And that's the thing about climate change. It is just about informing other people, and not, if they're not interested, they're not interested. You're not telling them what to do. You're just kind of helping them understand what climate change is.
And I think once that education bit happens, really businesses should be. You want to empower particularly younger workforce to demand a better place to work and to demand a better planet for them to live in, because we're rightly responsible for giving them what they've got now and their children when they come. So actually you want them to find their voices and demand change. And actually this kind of the sustainable element and the cultural element, that is a happy workforce. They're going to be demanding that they only work for businesses that are doing things right.
Yes.
And actually, I think the future, it really is the sustainable future for businesses. If they want to grow and if they want to attract the brightest young people into their businesses, that's not going to happen if they're not doing it. So it's got a myriad benefits to businesses to lead on it. And we were talking, weren't we, about being able to therefore identify clients who care and share the same values, suppliers who share the same values, and actually if we can all start to really connect with each other, and that big change can happen, can't it?
And you're talking money, you're talking about you will invest your money in suppliers and a value chain that has the same values as you, which can mean switching from one supplier to another. And the more businesses that can do that, the more ecosystem that we can create here in Shropshire of businesses that do business with each other very productively. And I think one thing that really interested me about the education piece, anything new that comes into business, before we can make good decisions, we have to be educated about it. And this first dawned on us when we were at the start of our journey. It had always been a personal interest, but we worked with Zero Carbon Shropshire and said, okay, right, how do we get to net zero? And I kind of Googled it, and it was, the answers for a small business were nothing. It was absolute tumbleweed. And so then we did some research with the Centre for Alternative Technology in Mahonclough, and they worked out with us, while we worked with businesses, they mapped out what the roadmap should be. And we talked about its education and then collaboration. We'd have to collaborate like we've never collaborated before. And this is about talking to suppliers, talking to customers, and talking about what you're doing. And the invitation is there, to join us, and we'll help you. We'll share the knowledge. And what I have found is that organisations are open to sharing the disappointments, the failures, the things they've spent money on that they shouldn't have done, because they want other businesses to come with them and they want to spare them that pain. So I think there's a lot of generosity when organisations go down this path. They want to knowledge share and help each other along.
Because that's that kind of seismic transformation that we've got to go through, isn't it? We were talking about like just within an organisation, you need to bring your people on, but actually we've got to do it on such a large scale. So actually that's where collaboration happens, so we can bring as many people with us simultaneously and as quickly as possible.
And I think Sue's saying that collaboration, it does feel like a big cultural shift in, because you talk about business, whether they're small businesses or large businesses, and business competition, and everything's very competitive and money focused. Obviously, businesses still have to be money focused,
of course,
but they're much more collaborative rather than competitive, because you don't have to compete with everybody. Obviously, Coca-Cola will compete with Pepsi. That's a given. But businesses, but they can still collaborate, particularly on issues of climate change. And small businesses, in particular, need to collaborate because they haven't got the time, the money, or the resources to do very much at all about climate change. But if they collaborate, they can make a real difference. And I think understand a lot more about the issue, which is vital at the start. You've got to understand it. You can't just sort of go and we'll do a carbon footprint, because what do you do with a carbon footprint?
But also, so many people were talking, before you came, like actually there's just terminology that we just don't understand. And I think that's a big problem, isn't it? That actually it's a very jargony kind of world, the sustainability world, isn't it? It's very jargon heavy, and that can be a barrier. But actually, when you break it down, it's all understandable. It's all there, isn't it? But you just need some hand holding through, and you just need to be committed to kind of facing what gets unearthed, isn't it? And doing whatever you can do in small stages to make things better.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree with you. And business owners are smart. They are good learners. They're good problem solvers. Otherwise, their businesses wouldn't exist. And we absolutely can get our heads around it. But like you say, there comes a point where you have to say, okay, we're going to invest at least a day in more training and working with our staff, so that we can work out, now we've got all these good things going on, how do we turn it into a strategy, into a policy? How do we use it to inform our customers, our suppliers, our community? But the business has to make that community, whilst we know that businesses are really struggling at the moment.
I think that's an important message that gets overlooked sometimes, because investing, any change is going to cost a business money. That's just how it is. If you're investing in people and training, that's a cost of the business. But ultimately, the message is about it's a commercially successful approach to any business to becoming more sustainable.
Absolutely, and becoming more sustainable, although there are costs attached to it in the short term.
The long term.
There are financial savings as well. You won't always find financial savings, but basically, if you get any organisation to look at how it functions and the processes and systems it uses, and to think about it, they'll come up with a better, cheaper way of doing it than the way they've always done it. Because you go into any business and say, well, we've always done it that way, and then you just have a fresh look at it and think, but actually we could do it that way. And
you'll reach your customers, and you'll get better people. And your turnover of staff. Will be slower. So that's a saving there. So it's a commercially viable, as well as as morally the right thing to do, isn't it?
Absolutely agree.
So have you got kind of the Climate Fresk workshop, with which we've been fortunate enough to experience today? You've got one coming up for Shropshire through the Shropshire Growth Hub, haven't you?
We have, on the 27th of June at the University of Shrewsbury.
It was University Centre.
University Centre,
Shrewsbury. And is that that'll be free then for businesses to sign up for, will it?
It's absolutely free for businesses to sign up. We can only take 21 businesses at a time because the game is so interactive that we need to be able to be on the spot to work with people. There are some spaces left, so
I'd so recommend anyone to doing it. It's just an amazing experience for us, and it's really set us on our path. You've created the roadmap that we didn't have before through it, and enabled the whole team to commit to that roadmap and own it as well. And that is, will be transformational for I think for everybody as individuals as well as the team. So they can go up to the Shropshire Growth Hub website to book onto that, or Eventbrite. Eventbrite. And then in terms of kind of finding out more about working with you both or having you into their businesses to do this on a kind of more kind of close in the way that you have worked with us, how would people go about doing that?
Best thing is drop us an email, sue@businessnetzero.com, kevin@businessnetzero.com, or just give us a ring. Go to the website, businessnetzero.com. So easy.
And my email and my phone number, I know people recommend you don't do this, but they're both on my LinkedIn profile.
No, that's all good, because you want to talk to people.
Exactly.
We do.
Or message me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and that passion for change, and that must be, do you feel kind of like it's starting to get more exciting because more people are buying into or understanding the urgency? Actually, you can be really leading on some of that change in the region.
I do. It is happening, whether it's because climate change is in the news every day.
Yeah.
In just normal conversations, we're talking about climate change. Globally, it's in the news. We are experiencing it here in Shropshire. We can see our farmers have struggled to plant their fields. The fields are still waterlogged. We've seen it on the roads. So whether that's because it's so much front and centre, I don't know. But I think
we can't wait any longer, though, is it? I think it's more, you don't have a choice, so please do it because you want to do it, but not because it's too late.
Yes,
I think that's where I was like, I think there's a pivotal point, I imagine, in terms of someone's commitment to driving change, because you don't have a choice, and there'll come a point where people don't have a choice.
No,
or
exactly.
Make the decision because you're making the right choice, and we've got to do everything we can and mobilise our business and our teams to understand where we're at from a climate change perspective.
I think you can equate it to digital transformation. So 10 years ago, we were told, if you don't embrace digital transformation, you won't be here in 10 years' time. And I know I was one of those people going, but it'll be fine. I don't need to do it. And then 5 years down the line, it's like, okay. And you're running to catch up. It's the same thing with this. We've really got until the end of this decade. So that's 6 years to drastically reduce our carbon emissions. As a business, if you're not on board now, if you don't understand what you need to be doing with your business and your customers, if you don't know how you're going to adapt, you're really going to struggle come at the end of the decade.
Because big businesses have got reporting requirements around carbon emissions.
Yeah.
Small businesses haven't. The reporting requirements are kind of getting lower and lower, so slightly smaller businesses have got reporting requirements, but that in a sense isn't the driving force for small businesses. The driving force for small businesses is customers and suppliers are demanding it of each other.
Yeah.
And if you don't confront climate change and you don't think about your emissions and reducing them and making your business more sustainable, then they'll go somewhere else. So, there is a business imperative to do something about it. It's not just about saving money, it's about saving your business ultimately. Because it is going to happen. This kind of train is thundering down the track and it's happening slowly, but it's not going to change.
No.
Climate change is a big thing, and carbon emissions have to be reduced, and so everybody's going to join in sooner or later, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like doing a workshop like you've led with the state, which has been so brilliant, is that you know, you get the whole team together, you make an impact together, and then everybody is, you can't do it alone. And as business leaders, you can't do it. You can't demand people make change. That's not the way to lead. People have to be like inspired and empowered to own that space, and that's what this workshop has kind of delivered. So I would recommend anybody start the journey with that education and action.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. It was an absolute pleasure. Lovely tea.
Really enjoyed it.
Great fun as well as really hard work.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for staying to talk to us on the podcast.
It's our pleasure.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you.